Om Tavakatham Tapta Jivanam Kavividetam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvigrinanti Bhuridajana. So we are studying the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and the meeting with Vidyasagar. That's the part we had started last time. So we are on page 102. And Sri Ramakrishna was talking about Advaita Vedanta, saying that how Brahman is beyond language and beyond conception. So he has given a couple of examples. The example of the ant and the hill of sugar, and the example of a man who went to see the ocean. So I'm reading it towards the last but one paragraph, page 102. Men often think they have understood Brahman fully. Once an ant went to a hill of sugar. One grain filled its stomach. Taking another grain in its mouth, it started homeward. On its way, it thought, next time I shall carry home the whole hill. That is the way shallow minds think. They don't know that Brahman is beyond one's words and thought. However great a man may be, how much can he know of Brahman? Shukadeva and sages like him may have been big ants, but even they could carry at the most 8 or 10 grains of sugar. That's one example. The second example was, as for what has been said in the Vedas and the Puranas, do you know what it is like? Suppose a man has seen the ocean and somebody asks him, well, what is the ocean like? The first man opens his mouth as wide as he can and says, what a sight, what tremendous waves and sounds. The description of Brahman in the sacred books is like that. It is said in the Vedas that Brahman is of the nature of bliss. It is Satchidananda. So 2 points have been made here. One is the infinitude of Brahman. So infinitude of Brahman in the sense, in two senses. One is the infinitude of Saguna Brahman, what we call the God of religion. The God of religion is also infinite and beyond our mortal mind to comprehend. A kind of, what it is like, the utmost description, the utmost effort the poet has made, the sage has made in the Bhagavad Gita, the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna gets a vision of the Vishwarupa, the Virat form of Ishvara. And imagine the extraordinary poetry that has been put forth in order to try to capture something of that vision. And that's a vision of God that is Brahman with qualities. And so there also you see the impossibility of the human mind. It's very difficult for the human mind to capture anything of God. The Americans have a nice phrase for it. They call it mind-blowing. So mind-blowing experience. That is true. Whether it is Moses seeing the burning bush, or in the Bible you find that no man may look upon God and live, statements like that, which is so tremendous, this experience. And we are talking about God with qualities here. Saguna Brahman, infinite qualities. And anyone, any mystic, any religion, they have seen one aspect of it at the most. It's not possible to do more than that. And it's not necessary. The ant needs just 1 grain of sugar to fill its little tiny stomach. So the ant looks back and says, I shall take home the entire hill of sugar. Not at all necessary. It's impossible. It is foolishness to think that, and not necessary also. All that we need is our own fulfillment. In another place in the gospel, when Sri Ramakrishna was talking, and since some devotee said, the path is endless. There is no end to this path. Sri Ramakrishna corrected him immediately. No. He said, Jekhane Shanti, Shekhane Shesh. Where you attain peace, that is the end for you. You will attain the end of the path. That is, you will attain peace. But that does not mean that is the only path, or that is the only limit for others. There may be various approaches, various aspects of God. So God is infinite. And that is why you have so many expressions of God, so many religions, so many experiences, so many mystics. So that is one way in God is infinite. Another deeper way is the absolute, Nirguna Brahman, which is spoken about in Advaita Vedanta. And also the other religions, they speak about it as the absolute, as the Godhead, um, as even as the void. So that impersonal reality, the impersonal Brahman, that is also infinite. And that is also beyond any human conception. But it lights up our mind. A mind cannot objectify Brahman, but mind itself is lit up by Brahman. Yan manasana manute yenahur manomatam. Kenopanishad says that which the mind cannot think of, but by which the mind is illumined. So this awareness which we have right now in the mind, by which we know everything, by which focused through the mind and the eyes, we are aware of seeing so many things. Focused through the mind and the ears, that same awareness reveals to us sounds. Right now, that's what's going on. I'm just describing what's going on right now. That awareness is the awareness in the mind, and its source is Brahman. The mind cannot simply, there is no way in which the mind can objectify that Brahman. The mind itself is an object for Brahman, an object which appears in itself, in Brahman, of course. So the mind can never objectify the absolute. In that sense also, Brahman is beyond the reach of the mind. So in two senses, Brahman is beyond the reach of the mind. One is the infinitude of the personal God, infinitude of the theistic God. Generally, Shankaracharya does not describe too much about that, but if you see one of the theistic philosophers like Ramanujacharya, so if you see even the first sentence of the Bhagavad Gita commentary of Ramanujacharya, if you compare with Shankaracharya, Shankaracharya simply says that Brahman through the power of Maya appeared as the avatar Krishna for the welfare of the world. That's it. Whereas Ramanujacharya, it's like a whole page, one sentence, whole page, full. He's just ecstatic in describing the extraordinary qualities of God. Infinite power and glory, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, all beneficial, all loving, all kindness. So extraordinary, possessed of extraordinary luminosity and beauty, and so on. And it's a whole page of descriptions. Ramanuja does that, and he does that more than once in the Gita commentary. So ecstasies in describing Narayana, that is the God of religion or the theistic God. In that sense also, God is beyond our reach. We can only understand one tiny aspect. And the impersonal sense is even further beyond. It's impossible for the mind to conceptualize, but not impossible to be known in a special sense, that I am that. And that's where Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta stands. That if it was completely impossible to conceptualize, that's where the philosopher Kant stopped, Immanuel Kant. He said it's unknowable. There is a reality beyond this universe, and there is a reality beyond the mind also, but that's unknowable. Advaita Vedanta says it is knowable. How? Not through the mind. You're right there. Mind cannot know it. But it's knowable because it is you yourself, and it is luminous. It's continuously revealing itself. So you are that, always self-revealed. Therefore, it is knowable in that sense only. Then he says, but then what about the scriptures? If it is not knowable, not expressible in language, then how is it the scriptures speak so much about it? The Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas are full of descriptions of God, whether with qualities that the God of religion or the absolute reality. They go on talking about it. So he says it is just an indirect description. Indirect description. Like, he says, the man who went to see the ocean, and then somebody asked him, what's the ocean like? And the man just could say, it was amazing, it was great, it was extraordinary, what the sounds and what a sight. Now that you hardly gather anything from that. And he says the entire descriptions which you find in Upanishads and Vedas, Puranas, and all scriptures, they're just like that, an indirect indication of what it is. It's only when one realizes it, or by the grace of God, one has a vision, then one gets some idea of what it is. Then he says, even the greatest of sages, Shuka and other sages, stood on the ocean of this stood on the shore of this ocean of Brahman and saw and touched the water. According to one school of thought, they never plunged into it. Those who do cannot come back to the world again. In Samadhi, one attains knowledge of Brahman, one realizes Brahman. In that state, reasoning stops altogether and man becomes mute. He has no power to describe the nature of Brahman. Once a salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. All laugh. It wanted to tell others how deep the water was. But this it could never do, for no sooner did it get into the water than it melted. Now who was there to report the ocean's depth? So in Samadhi, one attains knowledge of Brahman, one realizes Brahman. In that state, reasoning stops altogether and man becomes mute. So reasoning stops altogether. Here is all throughout, he's talking about the path of knowledge. So the method in the path of knowledge is reasoning. Reasoning, what kind of reasoning? Inquiry, self-inquiry into who am I or what am I? Because it is my own reality. If you want to realize God, you can look at your own reality. What do I mean by looking at your own reality? Looking at your own experience. What experience? Every experience. You could apply the paradigm of Drigdrishya Viveka, the seer and the seen, or you could apply the paradigm of the Prakriya, the method of the Panchakosha, the 5 levels of our being, or the Prakriya, the methodology of the 3 states of waking, dreaming, deep sleep. These are all what he means by reasoning. In all of this reasoning, all you arrive at is that this one consciousness, which is the witness of all experiences, that one consciousness, which is that which lends illumination and existence to the 5 levels of our being, the 5 sheets. The one consciousness which lights up and gives existence to waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. That's what you reach. And remember, the beauty of these methods is not that you just, it just tells you about a possibility. It's an argument. It's an argument. And it gives you the possibility that such a thing may be there. But because it is us, it is we are talking about, it is not a second-hand knowledge. Any kind of reasoning, experimentation, investigation about anything in the world will give you second-hand knowledge, because it is at a distance from you, whether it is atoms or it is some unexplored, underwater canyon or something like that. You will get information about it. You can investigate it, some star or planet or some element. And then at the most, you can investigate it with some instruments and you can get some kind of knowledge about it. That's true of things which are other than oneself. But here the investigation is about oneself, which is continuously shining forth. So once you locate it, it is experience itself. You see what point I'm trying to make here is that when we talk about reasoning, the thought gets into our mind is, all right, by reasoning, I get some conclusion, some understanding, some kind of knowledge. But here, in the case of reasoning about the self-inquiry, we not only get an understanding, we not only reach some kind of conclusion, but it is a living reality. It's an automatical experience, because you are it. You are continuously revealing yourself to yourself. So you realize Brahman by the method of inquiry, by the method of self-inquiry. You actually realize Brahman as a reality. Then, once it is, you see, oh, I am this. The natural tendency will be to remain absorbed in it. Remain absorbed in it means, instead of using that consciousness through the mind and the senses to be continuously engaged in the external world, the tendency of such mystics or such Vigyanis is to shut down our contact with the external world, close our eyes to the external world, dive deep in meditation. Dive deep in meditation means the mind, which has discovered its real nature as Brahman, now is absorbed in Brahman. You remain absorbed in it, mind becomes absorbed in Samadhi, and ultimately Nirvikalpa Samadhi. At that point, he says, reasoning ceases, reasoning stops altogether. Reasoning can only take you to there, and then it stops. Obviously, because the intellect is not functioning anymore, it has stopped. Man becomes mute. Obviously, you do not reason, you do not think, you do not speak, but you have not fallen asleep. In Vedanta Sar class, we saw the difference between Nirvikalpa Samadhi and deep sleep. He has no power to describe the nature of Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna, for example, and there are other mystics also who tried to convey to us what it is like. And when they try to convey, because it is a living reality for them, the mind immediately becomes absorbed in that. It's like the salt doll going into the water, and there is no way of explaining it anymore. He can explain it. Sri Ramakrishna can explain, and others also, mystics, can tell us what it is like, the highest reality. But for that, they have to come out of it and then use the mind and see this world and have that subject-object duality appearing again, switch on the movie and jump into the movie and then explain it to us. But already, Sri Ramakrishna would say, already 10 steps I have come down from there. That is possible. There also, they will use this indirect language, examples, metaphors, in order to point to it. Then he gives the example, once a salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. Obviously, salt doll melts into the ocean. Who will come back again? Now, there are two meanings to this. One is that once you realize that through the method of inquiry and your mind is absorbed in samadhi, in that, even just once, for once also, in that case, you do not come back. Nobody who has realized this has actually come back. That's one sense of the story, that the salt doll will not come back. Because what comes back is Brahman itself appearing in this way. There is no doubt anymore in the mind of the enlightened one that he or she is actually Brahman. That absolute thing is, I am that absolute reality, Aham Brahmasmi. There is no more the earlier sense of being, I am just this individual Sarvapriyananda, nothing more. No. That has gone forever. So in that sense, the salt doll has melted away. Forever. It will not come back. Even though the person comes back, Sri Ramakrishna or Ramana Maharshi and others, they come back. We see that they live for years and years, decades after their first Nirvikalpa Samadhi. In fact, in between, they attain Nirvikalpa Samadhi so many times and come back again. But in that sense, that salt doll has melted and not come back again anymore. Because what comes back is the reality, I am Brahman, that is very clear. That false individuality, I am just this person, Ramana or Ramakrishna, that will never come back again. So in that sense, the salt doll has melted permanently. All right. There is a second sense in which Sri Ramakrishna has used this salt doll example, which he later on in other places he will say, after attaining the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, one does not come back again. In 21 days, the body will fall off. He has mentioned that a number of times. So one does not actually even come back in this form and talk to people, and that will not happen anymore. That's it. The person is gone forever. So what does that mean? You see, if the person does not at all come back in the Ramakrishna form, in the Ramana form, or Vivekananda or Shankara form, then so what is that? And how is it then that Ramana and Ramakrishna and Shankara were able to come back and talk? After all, they did come back, luckily for us. That's why we have this huge book, more than 1,000 pages. If Sri Ramakrishna had not come back, and 21 days later, if his body had fallen off, then we wouldn't have this huge book. That's why we have all of the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, all the work done by Shankaracharya and others. So, two questions here. One is, what is this whole thing about 21 days body falling away and Nirvikalpa Samadhi not coming back? That I'll tell you a little bit about it from what the texts say about it. And the second one is, when they do come back after Nirvikalpa Samadhi, what is exactly happening there? So the first one is, what is this whole thing about attaining Nirvikalpa Samadhi and not coming back? Suppose one practices the way of classical Advaita Vedanta. One practices either Drigdrishya Viveka or Avasthatraya Vichara or Panchakosha Vichara, or any one of the methods of inquiry, and suddenly, by the grace of God, by one's great good karma or fortune, one suddenly realizes Aham Brahmasmi. That becomes clear. Then one stays in meditation, absorbed in that realization for some time. So what is it like? So there are 7 stages. Classically, this is called the 7 yoga bhumis. Yoga here means jnana yoga, yoga bhumis. You can find a description in, I think, Yoga Vashishta. You can find it in Jivan Mukti Viveka of Vidyani Swami. But the place I will read to you is from this translation of Vivek Chudamani, which is published by the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. So at the end, there is a very interesting appendix which talks about this, being absorbed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi and not coming back. So that one is mentioned here. So this is in the appendix to this edition of Vivek Chudamani. By the way, before I enter into that, the speciality of this edition is it has the Sanskrit commentary of Sri Chandrasekhara Bharati of Sringeri, who was one of the greatest of modern Shankaracharyas. He was an enlightened soul, Jivan Mukta. So he has written a Sanskrit commentary to the whole Vivek Chudamani, almost the whole, not towards the end, some he could not complete anymore. He was also in that state of Samadhi, he could not come back and write. He lost all interest in completing it. And this text contains the original shloka of Vivek Chudamani and the English translation, and the English translation of the Chandrasekhara Bharati's Sanskrit commentary. And it's best read if you have the Sanskrit commentary, and then you could read the English translation with it. That helps. Anyway, that's just by the way. In the appendix, very interestingly, only one appendix is there, and that appendix talks about this Nirvikalpa Samadhi and not coming back. Those things are talked about here. So there he says, there are 7 stages of yoga in the path of knowledge. Yoga Bhumi, 7. I'll just read out the names, but I will not describe the stages. I'll just go to the interesting part at the end. The 7 stages are Shubhecha, Vicharana, Tanumanasa, Sattvapatti, Asamshakti, Padartha Bhavini, and Turiyaga. So the first 3 stages are stages of preparation and spiritual progress. It is in the 4th state that one realizes Brahman, and the one who has reached the 4th state is called a Brahmavit, knower of Brahman. That person has realized Brahman. So if you have realized Brahman, then what are the 5th, 6th, and 7th stages? The 5th, 6th, and 7th stages are progressively deeper states of Samadhi. They are progressively deeper states of Samadhi, and all of them are states of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It is just the quality of the mind which is absorbed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. What are the differences? The difference is that the states of state 4, 5, 6, and 7, these 4 states. 4th one is the realization, becoming enlightened. The one realizes, I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. That one is called Brahmavit, knower of Brahman. The 5th, 6th, and 7th stages, that one goes into deeper and progressively deeper and deeper states of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And the terms used for these states are Brahmavidvara, a superior knower of Brahman, Brahmavidvaryan, even more superior knower of Brahman. And the final one is Brahmavidvarishtha, the supreme knower of Brahman. What are the differences in these 3 states? In the 5th state, one awakes of one's own accord from Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Such a yogi is called Brahmavidvara, a superior knower of Brahman. Then, and by the way, all these states you can see in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. That's an amazing thing of how, he used to be absorbed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and then he would not eat. And there's another monk who would come and feed him by force. He was not aware of the external world. 5th stage is the one does not come out of one awakes of Nirvikalpa Samadhi of one's own accord. One goes into Nirvikalpa Samadhi and comes out. And you have seen this in many cases. Swami Vivekananda, the first time he attains Nirvikalpa Samadhi, exactly like that. And he goes into it and then finally comes down. Then in 6th state, the yogin gets awakened by persons who are near him. Such a one is called Brahmavidvaryan, a higher or more superior knower of Brahman. So one is lost here, and one will not come out unless someone pulls him out by force. Often in Sri Ramakrishna's Samadhis, he would tell people how to awaken me from Samadhi. And he had a variety of Samadhis depending on what his mind was contemplating on when he went into that Samadhi. Suppose he was thinking about Sri Krishna. And then he would tell the people around, when you see me going to Samadhi in that situation, repeat these names in my ear. Sometimes thinking about the Divine Mother, sometimes the impersonal Absolute. And he would teach the people around him, like Latu, the Holy Mother herself, and some others, those who were close attendants, how to bring his mind down from such states. Now, it's very interesting. We think the person in Samadhi is not at all aware of anything. Yet it's so interesting that if you repeat a particular mantra, then the mind of that person will come down, which means he may not be aware of anything in that world, but there is something that will penetrate that absorption. And that might be the mantra related to that particular kind of absorption. Then the last one, the seventh one. To the yogin who has attained the seventh bhumika, that is called the Turiyaga, there is no getting up either by oneself or induced by others. So this is called Brahmavid Varishta, the supreme knower of Brahman. But that is the one who will not come back after 21 days. I mean, 21 days the body may last, and then the body will fall off. So sometimes it creates confusion. When Sri Ramakrishna says that after attaining that Samadhi, one does not come back, then how is it that Sri Ramakrishna himself has come back, and Shankaracharya and Vivekananda and all the great masters, and thank God they came back, then otherwise who would teach us? But then one may think that did they not attain that supreme state? All of them have attained it, but depending on the level of absorption. Now the level of absorption, does that mean that they know a little more about Brahman than the others? No. These are the conditions of the mind, nothing to do with themselves. They themselves know that we are Brahman with eyes closed and eyes open. Now the second question was, so when they do come back, after realizing I am Brahman, when they do come back, what is it that comes back? So as long as the prarabdha karma of this particular body is left, this body will continue to function. Even if you immerse the mind in Nirvikalpa Samadhi once in a while, whether you come out of it yourself because of the force of your past karma, or you are induced to come out of it by some others around you, in any case, you will come out. You will come out means from your perspective, from the enlightened one's perspective, you have not come out of anything. You are Brahman, you have realized that you always were, and you are, and you will continue to be Brahman. But again, it will appear, the same Brahman will now appear to you as the mind, even as the ego. Sri Ramakrishna himself will say, Brahman itself will appear as the ego and the mind and the intellect and the body and the senses and the external world. Every bit of it is nothing other than Brahman. So that will appear. And once that appears, if the ego appears, what is the ego? I. Now, for the enlightened person, there's an interesting state. What is that I of the enlightened person? Right now, in an unenlightened state, I might say, what is the sense of I? I am this person called Sarvapriyananda, that's all I know. Theoretically, I'm reading many things, but I know that I'm only Sarvapriyananda. But the enlightened person very clearly knows I am Brahman. But also, secondarily, like a layer, body, mind, that individuality appears again. Now, what do you do with that? Sri Ramakrishna says there are two ways of dealing with it. One is the way of knowledge, where you accept the truth. Let that I say, Aham Brahmasmi, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am Brahman, appearing in this way, in this body and mind. Just as everybody is exactly the same Brahman. Just that in this mind, that knowledge is there, that awareness is there. All other minds, those who think that we are ignorant, we are helpless, we are poor, we are suffering, they are also exactly the same Brahman that I am. But it's just that covering, that veil is there. I was just thinking today, the difference is like this. Before enlightenment, there's this veil which covers our nature as Brahman. Before enlightenment, it's not that we feel there's a veil which has covered our nature as Brahman. You know what has happened? we think of ourselves as that veil, as the curtain. That curtain is what we identify with. At our deepest level, even below the ego, even transcending the ego, is ajnana, ignorance. That ignorance is like the curtain. And the last thing that we as unenlightened persons, the last thing we can conceive of, the deepest thing we can conceive of, is that curtain. And opening that curtain is very difficult for us. It is stunning for the mind. It's like we are being torn apart. We don't want to let go of that. But actually, we are not that. We are the light beyond the curtain. Once that is done, from the enlightened, you are enlightened, you realize you are Brahman, you are the light beyond the curtain. After that, curtain comes or goes does not matter for you, because you are the light. The curtain and all the things projected on the curtain after that, let them come up again. You know you are the light. There is no problem at all. Now you can remain like that and say, I am Brahman. And Sri Ramakrishna says that is the ego of knowledge. That is an enlightened state. Or you can do the other thing. You can be a devotee. You can again re-identify with the body and mind and say, that light, my real nature, is now the Lord of the universe, my divine mother, and I am the child of the divine mother. Or Narayana, I am the devotee of Narayana. You can establish a loving devotional relationship on the foundation of knowledge. On the foundation of knowledge that I am ultimately one with that light I am. Hanuman's experience, when Hanuman was asked by Rama, what do you think of me? As this person on this other side of the curtain, Hanuman, I am your servant, you are my Lord. But that does not end Hanuman's realization. As the subtlest part of myself, that curtain and the light behind it, light and curtain together, mixed up, hidden, I am the jiva. And I am thy part. You are the whole, I am thy part. And as the Atman, that is the light itself, you and I are one reality. This is my conviction. So this is a kind of Jnana Mishra Bhakti, knowledge and devotion combined together. And that is the ego of the devotee. So all of this, I'm just repeating what Sri Ramakrishna himself said. In this little book, the collected sayings of Sri Ramakrishna, collected by Swami Brahmananda, none other than Swami Brahmananda. After enlightenment, what happens? Sri Ramakrishna says, Dui rakom ami ache, ekta paka ami ar ekta kacha. The ego is of two forms, the ripe and the unripe. What is the unripe? I'm reading the Bengali first. Amar badi, amar ghar, amar chele, egulo kacha ami. My house, my room, my child, these are the unripe, unfortunately. I said, Swami, that's how we think. Unfortunately, that's the unripe ego. Then what is the ripe ego? Arpaka ami hoche, the ripe ego is Amitar Dash, I am the servant of the Lord. See exactly what Hanuman said. Thou art my master, I am thy servant. Amitar Shantan, I am the child of God. Like Sri Ramakrishna's own attitude was, I am the child of God. God is my mother, I am the child. And another form of the ripe ego. This is interesting. This is what usually Master Masha leaves out. Because Master Masha, I think he was deeply devotional. Of course, he had full realization, but his attitude was devotional. The other form of the ripe ego, which Swami Brahmananda says here, Sri Ramakrishna is to say, Ar amishai nitto mukto gyan sharup. I am that eternally free consciousness. I am that eternally free consciousness is the ego speaking. After all, when you say I am that consciousness, who is speaking? The ego is speaking. But which ego is this? The ripe ego. After enlightenment, when the whole movie starts again, the ego will come back, the mind will come back, memories will come back, the personality will come back, the body will come back, and the world we are living in, it will come back. Everything will come back. But we now realize, first, it's a movie. It's not real in itself. The reality is the screen, is the existence consciousness bliss, which I really am. But I, being that, also I am a little character in this movie. So that's the enlightened person's perspective. The real I, the big I, aham brahmasmi, there's no doubt about it. There you need not even say I am Brahman. Here, the little I, what will I do with that little I? I can't say anymore honestly that I am just the temple priest Ramakrishna. I am just the young monk Shankaracharya, or the ascetic staying in Arunachala Ramana. I know I am not that. I'm very clearly not that. So what is the honest way of understanding the I? It could be a devotee. I am the child of the Divine Mother. I am one with Arunachala Shiva. I am that being, that existence, consciousness place. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. That is the Jnana Swarupa. The second way of dealing with the I. Now, with all this background, we'll see what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, and it will make sense. So he says that, how can the salt doll speak? Then immediately the natural question is, so what about all the great masters? They are speaking. Haven't they gone into the ocean and melted away into the ocean? And then the devotee asks, page 103. A devotee. Suppose a man has obtained the knowledge of Brahman in Samadhi. Doesn't he speak anymore? Well, obviously he does, because there's so many such examples. And thank God they do speak. Master. Shankaracharya, the footnote is one of the greatest philosophers of India. Shankaracharya retained the ego of knowledge in order to teach others. After the vision of Brahman, a man becomes silent. He reasons about it as long as he has not realized it. We give some examples. If you heat butter in a pan on the stove, it makes a sizzling sound as long as the water it contains has not dried up. But when no trace of water is left, the clarified butter makes no sound. If you put an uncooked cake of flour in that butter, it sizzles again. But after the cake is cooked, all sound stops. Just so, a man established in Samadhi comes down to the relative plane of consciousness in order to teach others, and then he talks about God. So, like the butter sizzling initially, that's when we are meditating, we are praying, we are attending classes, and we are trying to investigate into our own experience of the body and mind and trying to discover the witness consciousness. That's the sizzling of the butter. Once we realize it, it stops. There's silence. Literally, there's silence. The moment of realization will be the moment of dead silence. It's like the universe comes to a halt, even for a fraction of a second. So that is the fourth stage, Brahmavit, the knower of Brahman. Now, that man may stay in that state of silence. So then the man will go into deeper and deeper levels, the Brahmavit Vara, Brahmavit Varyan, and Brahmavit Varishta, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Or you may put an uncooked flour into that butter, and which starts sizzling again. The person may come back and teach. There may be disciples, there may be, it could be the people who gathered around Ramana Maharshi, or the so many waves of disciples who came to Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar, or Shankaracharya, who himself went out to teach across the length and breadth of India. So spiritual masters, they again sizzle, the butter sizzles again for a while, not because they're again trying to attain enlightenment. They have already attained, but they're using that body and mind to interact with others in order to transmit that realization. Another example. So he says, as a man established in Samadhi comes down to the relative plane of consciousness in order to teach others, and then he talks about God. It's like that sizzling starting again, just for a little while. Another beautiful example he gives, the bee buzzes as long as it is not sitting on a flower. It becomes silent when it begins to sip the honey. But sometimes, intoxicated with the honey, it buzzes again. See, the observation of nature. It's like something that a child would note. When you play in the garden and you would see bees buzzing around, then you would see a bee lighting on a flower, and then it becomes silent. It's sipping or taking honey from there. And while taking honey, once in a while, it makes a little humming sound intermittently, a little bit. So Sri Ramakrishna says it's as if it's intoxicated with the honey and expresses it in the little buzzing once in a while. Similarly, the enlightened one, seeking, so it's just like the buzzing bee buzzing around. Then alighting on the flower and being absorbed in it is realizing I am Brahman. Or a devotee getting the vision of the Ishta Devata in Savikalpa Samadhi. And after that, a little bit of buzzing is when that person maybe comes down from that absorption. Sri Ramakrishna used to sing and dance, or someone like Shankaracharya would write books and give instructions and teach. That's the that new buzzing of the bee, which is already sipping the honey. Another example he gives, wonderful examples. An empty pitcher makes a gurgling sound when it is dipped in water. So you see, when you're putting it in the pool or something, then there's the glug glug sound which is coming when the water is pouring in. When it fills up, it becomes silent. All laugh. But if the water is poured from it into another pitcher, then you will hear the sound again. So laughter. Again, a very nice example. You take a pot and you fill up water from a lake or a pool, you'll see the glug 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 sound as the water pot fills up. But when it fills up, no more sound is there. But then when you want to pour water into something else, again that glug glug sound will come when you pour it out. And it's exactly like that. When we are seeking, when we are trying, all these activities are going on. You attend classes, you argue, reason it out, you find something convincing, you practice this, you forget about it for a while, you come back again, and it may take years. It's the pitcher filling up. But once it's done, it's a particular moment comes when it's full, and suddenly you have it. Then you are silent. But then again, on the other side of enlightenment, one may not. One may remain full, and then nobody would know. But one may actually express in song and dance and writing and speaking. The rishis of old attained the knowledge of Brahman. One cannot have this so long as there is the slightest trace of worldliness. How hard the rishis labored. Early in the morning, they would go away from the hermitage and would spend the whole day in solitude, meditating on Brahman. At night, they would return to the hermitage and eat a little fruit or roots. They kept their minds aloof from the objects of sight, hearing, touch, and other things of a worldly nature. Only thus did they realize Brahman as their own inner consciousness. This is the path of knowledge, and shows it's difficult. The fourfold qualifications have to be taken seriously. But in the Kali Yuga, man, being totally dependent on food for life, cannot altogether shake off the idea that he is the body. In this state of mind, it is not proper for him to say, I am he. When a man does all sorts of worldly things, he should not say, I am Brahman. Those who cannot give up attachment to worldly things and who find no means to shake off the feeling of I should rather cherish the idea, I am God's servant, I am his devotee. One can also realize God by following the path of devotion. An important point. If you see the traditional path of Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishads and the Prakarana texts which we have been seeing, Panchadashi and Vedanta Sara, Drigdrishya, Viveka, Paroksha, Anubhuti, they are all the royal road. You are that reality, and we are going to point it out to you. Follow this. We get stuck at various levels on that path. Various levels. One may be that at all there is no interest at all in all of that. Why is that so? When so many people are not interested, especially people who are enthusiastic about Vedanta, the first temptation is to go around and telling your friends and colleagues, here is this wonderful thing that I have found, and then they are shocked with the total lack of interest or comprehension. And if you persist, they will think you are a nutcase. Now, that is one level. Why is that so? Unfortunately, it's because of deep worldliness. It does not matter how smart a person is. It does not matter even how decent and moral a person might be, quite good in other ways. But if a person has no interest at all, and it doesn't have to be Advaita Vedanta, but if a person has no interest at all in the higher spirituality, call it God, Nirvana, the void, the Tao, Allah, Narayana, the Divine Mother, or the absolute reality, I am that, whichever way, if there is no interest at all, and there are many such people, then the spiritual life has not begun yet for them. It will take time, maybe not in this lifetime. Then the next level is people are interested, but they don't get it. It's not at all very clear what it is, what's being talked about. I've seen it again and again. Very smart people. They have absolutely no idea. They are interested in it, but they don't get it at all. What Advaita Vedanta is talking about. And then the next level might be you get it. And most, like I think most people here, we get it. What is being talked about, it's understandable. But we find great difficulty in living it, in making the breakthrough, number one, and then living it also. It will be great difficulty. Why? The conditionings of our mind are so strong. As Ramakrishna says, Annagata Pran, our Annagata Pran literally depending on food, literal translation, but what it means is physicality. We are very physical beings. Our level of existence is mostly the Annamaya Kosha, the food sheet, and the Pranamaya Kosha, the vital sheet. And that's where our mind really lies. Intellect may soar very high and understand and grasp many things, but it's very difficult for us to pull up all the baggage that we have accumulated. And Sri Ramakrishna used to give another example of a mongoose who was going to leap over a wall, but couldn't do that because some mischievous boys, mongoose is long and bushy tail. So mischievous boys had tried a brick to the tail. So the moment the poor mongoose tried to leap up, it would fall back again because the brick is there. So we are like that. We try to leap up. We know we can do it. But when we try to do that, it's not possible. Any kind of major physical pain, any kind of trouble in the world which causes immediately anxiety, which we cannot get rid of. Even all, I am Brahman, I am the witness. I understand, I'm the witness of the anxiety. That also I understand. Still can't get rid of the anxiety. I understand, I'm the witness of the pain. But still we feel that it will be better if the pain goes. I'm the witness, not affected by the pain. It will be better if there's no pain. I would rather be the witness of the absence of the pain, not than the presence of the pain. What is that? That is physicality. Is it possible for human beings to be any other way? Yes. I'm not talking about the ancient rishis which Ramakrishna was talking about, but I've seen advanced spiritual seekers. They're so non-physical. I mean, it's just like a light shining through. Very old swamis, frail bodies, I mean, really sick. It just doesn't seem to be a person in the body. I've seen exactly a swami who was paralyzed for more than 10 years. Both feet paralyzed, one hand paralyzed, and blind in both eyes. You might think that's a miserable condition for an old man to be in, especially a monk who doesn't have people to care for him, doesn't have money, nothing. I haven't seen anybody happier. There wasn't even ever, I never saw him. I stayed with him day and night for over a month, or nearly a month. Not once a single statement about his own physical illness. Never, no question of feeling sorry for himself. If he was in the room, his bed, if you're in the room where his bed was, he would dominate the entire room. He was quite the character. Amazing. Nobody went to him and came away without feeling uplifted. Now, how is that possible? So such people are there. They can, and such people can easily live. They can translate this realization, I am the witness consciousness, into a lived reality, no matter what the physical circumstance. So I have seen such people, but it may not be possible to us, possible for us. So Sri Ramakrishna says, acknowledge the truth. You are Brahman. Don't worry about it. But right now, Swami Vivekananda used to say, I know where the shoe pinches, where the trouble is. Another great sadhu I met a few times, whom I consider to be a Jivan Mukta, Ramananda Saraswati, who passed away a few years ago. He used to say, अपना सच्चाई को स्वीकार करना बहुत बड़ा गुण है. The recognition of your own truth is a very great quality. You don't have to tell anybody. I don't have to tell anybody, but I should not deceive myself that my mind, my samskaras, my level, this is the quality of my meditation. These are the qualities of my thoughts. This is, if I check my behavior and my daily life, this is how I'm living. So if this is just acknowledge it to yourself that yes, so I have a long way to go to be a Jivan Mukta, to express the divinity within. Then what do? Then we need help, and luckily help is available. And Sri Ramakrishna says the greatest help is devotion to God. I am God's servant, I am his devotee. One can also realize God by following the path of devotion. What will happen? If you follow the path of devotion with the goal of enlightenment, amazingly enough, that breakthrough you were seeking, that I should have that moment of breakthrough, realize clearly, I am not the curtain, I am the light beyond the curtain. I am not the body mind, I am the consciousness, I am not the 5 sheets, I am the witness of the 5 sheets, witness of the 3 states. I must realize it as a vivid reality. That will suddenly come. I have seen people who got that breakthrough, became enlightened, but they were not doing Vedanta inquiry. They were rather repeating the mantra of the Ishta Devata, 8-10 hours a day, living on arms in like mountain caves or huts, and just an effort. They made an effort. They were not particularly doing Vedantic inquiry, but suddenly the result they got was not a vision of the Ishta Devata. The result they got was the Vedantic breakthrough. I am Brahman. So as Sri Ramakrishna says, one can also realize God by following the path of devotion. It is by the grace of God that suddenly, if you, another example he gives is, the mother is busy with work. The child who has been given toys to play, if the child keeps, nagging the mother, give me money, I want to buy that thing, I want to buy this, buy something. And finally, the mother, out of irritation, mother doesn't want to give, it's not time to give the child what the child wants, but just out of irritation, because she's busy and she can't take that nagging anymore, will throw, he says so casually, he will throw 2 paisa, like 2 pence to the child, go and buy your toy. And it's like that. For God, the greatest thing that we could have, the realization I am Brahman, is just like that. If God wants, and God can give it just like that, even if we don't deserve it at all. The Gyani gives up his identification with worldly things, discriminating not this, not this. Only then can you realize Brahman. What is that discrimination? Not this, not this. We have discussed these techniques many times. The method of the 3 states, avasthatraya vivek, vichara, the method of the 5 sheets, panchakosha vichara, drigdrishya vivek, and there are other ways also. Going from existence, like from particular things to the absolute existence. There are different ways. All of them are ways of neti neti. It is like reaching the roof of a house by leaving the steps behind one by one. But the Vigyani, who is more intimately acquainted with Brahman, realizes something more. He realizes that the steps are made of the same materials as the roof, bricks, lime, and brick dust. That which is realized intuitively as Brahman, through the eliminating process of not this, is then found to have become the universe and all its living beings. The Vigyani sees that the reality which is nirguna, without attributes, is also saguna, with attributes. Very important. This is where jnana and bhakti meet. If you go by some radical non-dualist path, Ishwar or Saguna Brahman is left behind. So it's part of what you transcend. But the better and deeper understanding is what is Saguna Brahman is also Nirguna Brahman. Or what is Nirguna Brahman is also Saguna Brahman. With the attributes of Maya, that same Nirguna Brahman is Saguna Brahman. You don't catch hold of 2 Brahmans. They are not 2 Brahmans. I mentioned a recording I heard of Anandamayi Ma. Somebody asked her the same question. And her answer was so childlike, but very beautiful. Exactly. It shows a person for whom enlightenment is just is a very natural thing. Are the paths of devotion and knowledge the same, or are they different? She said, my child, they are the same. Why? Because you get the same reality in both paths. In both paths, you reach the same reality. Then the next thing she says was very incisive. She says, however, if you miss that reality, the paths will be different. The paths seem very different if you have not yet caught that reality. If you have caught that reality through Nirguna Brahman or through Saguna Brahman, you will see that, yes, both paths are fine. But if we have not yet caught that, the path seems so different from each other. A man cannot live on a roof a long time. He comes down again. Those who realize Brahman in Samadhi come down also and find that it is Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings. In the musical scale, there are the notes sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, but one cannot keep one's voice on ni a long time. The ego does not vanish altogether. The man coming down from Samadhi perceives that it is Brahman that has become the ego. Notice, Brahman has become the ego also. Brahman that has become the ego, the universe, and all living beings. This is known as Vigyana. The path of knowledge leads to truth, as does the path that combines knowledge and love. The path of love too leads to this goal. The way of love is as true as the way of knowledge. Three paths have been distinguished here. One is the pure path of knowledge, which we talk about in the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sara, Drigdrishya, Viveka, Parokshanubhuti, and so on. We follow that path to realize you are Brahman, the witness consciousness. Or what I mentioned just now, your goal is realization that I am Brahman, but you're taking the help of Ishvara, of God. By the grace of God, you get, by the grace of the Divine Mother, by the grace of your Ishta Devata, you get that realization. The Divine Mother can give that realization. So you'll say that then I don't need to come to your class. No, the class is there. That has to go on. That's part of the buzzing of the bee. That's part of the sizzling of the butter or the gurgling of the pot. I have so many examples now to use. So it's part of that. But the breakthrough will be given by the grace of God. So that's the path combining knowledge and devotion and love. Now there's a third one, the pure path of bhakti, where this whole question of I am Brahman, I will realize myself as Brahman, that does not arise at all. You take yourself as you are, this person, and you love God, and that's it, full stop. I'm all about loving God. I'm totally devoted to God. I do not want anything else in life. If God gives Brahma Jnana, knowledge that I'm Brahman, fine. If God does not, fine. If God after death takes me to the highest heaven, to Vaikuntha and Shivaloka, and I'll live there for eternity, wonderful. If I'm whirled in samsara, in births and deaths, as long as I have devotion to God, my only prayer will be that let me have devotion to God. That's also wonderful. That's just the path of love and love only, bhakti. So that is called the path of love too leads to this goal. The way of love is as true as the way of knowledge. All paths ultimately lead to the same truth. But as long as God keeps the feeling of ego in us, it is easier to follow the path of love. All right. Let me see the activity in the chat. Cordelia says, did Mother Kali not tell Sri Ramakrishna that she would keep him in a state that would allow him to come back? Is it called Bhava Mukha? Yes. But that seems rather special to the avatar. Then Subrata asks, Swamiji, probably M did not record it because he used to go to Thakur on the weekends, where Rakhal Maharaj wrote it down during the weekdays. That's also a possibility, because on the weekends, mostly the householder devotees would be there, and Sri Ramakrishna would talk mostly about devotion. Where on the weekdays, the young boys who he was training to be monks would come, and he would teach the path of knowledge as well. Patrick says, do you remember the story of the Holy Mother being in deep samadhi, which no one could bring her out of until someone thought to address her as his mother? I don't recall that one, but if you can find the reference, that would be great. Srinivas says, I have not understood the graduation of the great masters from the 7th stage of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where the body is dropped in 21 days into Sahaja Samadhi. Yes, not from 7th stage into Sahaja Samadhi. The persons may be in Sahaja Samadhi. There would be such persons who, with eyes open and eyes closed, it's a natural state for them. But they may still, for reasons known only to them, sometimes they may be with eyes open and, like interacting with the world outside with us, or sometimes indrawn. So they may still, even being in Sahaja Samadhi, they may still actually go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, cutting off the external world. You see that in Sri Ramakrishna's life. In the lives of Jivan Muktas, you see both. That being in Sahaja Samadhi, interacting with the world, and being absorbed in actual Nirvikalpa Samadhi, not interacting with the world, only being absorbed in the eternal, in the absolute. So both are, you can see. And it cannot be going into Sahaja Samadhi after the seventh stage, because after the seventh stage, there's no more coming back into Sahaja Samadhi. There's the body will drop off. Vishwanath says, Totaka Acharya Giri was granted realization by Bhagavan Shankaracharya. Yes, though he was not fully qualified. Is this something all realized masters can bless their disciples with? It depends on the power. Not all masters can bless. If they could, they would. But it depends on the master and depends on the teacher, on the student. Depends on the master and the student. I remember this gentleman who went to one of the early presidents of our order. He thought he would ask, just like Naren asks Sri Ramakrishna, does God exist or have you seen God? Luckily, he did not ask, have you seen God? He asked the Swami, does God exist? And the Swami replied, neither are you Narendranath nor am I Ramakrishna. So, yes, I can initiate you with the mantra, show you the way to practice, and we are fellow travelers on the path of realization. Someone may be far ahead of us and someone we may be far beyond, but we are still moving on the same path. Some are there who can actually give that realization, but that is rare, and wanting it is also rare. Wanting it is also rare. I remember I asked this wonderful Swami who I thought was enlightened, and I asked him straight away, are you enlightened? Do you see Brahman? Do you see Brahman everywhere when eyes closed and open? And then his answer was very sweet, old Swami. He was nearly 100 years old at that time. He said, if I say yes, will you believe me? In Bengali, I'm bolle ki tumi vishwas korbe. What difference does it make to you? That's the point. What will you do with it? It's an interesting fact. Like, it's a story. Like I'm telling you the story many years after that fact. But what else did I do with it? Prabir Babu, you can ask the question.
Maharaj, I have a question about, you ended with ego. About what is really ego? I mean, it is not the reflected consciousness. It is part of the mind, I understand.
Yes.
But how does it get, I mean, how does this I feeling come? And
Vedanta Sara again there, that's why Vedanta Sara is very useful. What is Vedanta Sara? Well, what does Vedanta Sara say about ego? Ahankara, antakkarana. It is abhimanatmika antakkarana vritti. It is an activity of the mind. Clearly, it's an activity of the mind. The ego is an activity of the mind. What activity? What are the activities of the mind? Memory is an activity of the mind. Intellect, the way of trying to understand something, is an activity of the mind. Emotions are an activity of the mind. Desires are an activity of the mind. Ego is similarly one type of activity of the mind. The mind has many apps. So the ego is one kind of very dangerous app. What does it do? It plays a very important function. It integrates the activities of body mind. Abhimanatmika antakkarana vritti ahankaraha. Vedanta's our definition. Abhimanatmika means the nature of appropriating. What does it do? All the functions of mind and body which are going on. It says, I am talking, I am walking, I am this body, I am angry, I am desirous, I am fulfilled, I am learning Vedanta. I remember this shloka. I did not remember the shloka. The memory is the one which delivered the shloka. The body with the legs is the one which is doing the walking. The voice is voice box and lungs and the tongue and all, they are talking. They are doing the talking function. But the ego keeps saying, I. Every function of the body is integrated by the ego. And it's necessary. Otherwise, we will not be able to function as a sentient being. Now, we have a clear I am this. Lower animals also have an ego. They don't think about it as an I, but they have a feeling of being something different from the rest. A subjective feeling. The ego is there, and that's the function. The problem is we think we are that much only. And what is the ego constituted of? Ego is constituted of two parts. One is the ego itself, the ahankara, which is purely a function of the mind. But there is also the reflection of consciousness in it. That is called chidabhasa. That's why it seems so luminous. I feel that I am aware. I am shining with awareness. So am I Atman? No, not at all. I am a function of the mind. This I am here shining with awareness, I am present. All this disappears in a moment. If I fall asleep or someone knocks me on the head or somebody puts, sleeping, this anesthesia, general anesthesia, I just go to sleep. The mind stops functioning. It stops the ego activity. Then the reflected consciousness there disappears also. And there's no feeling of ego. But the consciousness beyond the curtain of darkness is still there. And that is what we truly are. So upon enlightenment, what happens is my distinction from the ego is clear. The real I is not the ego. This distinction becomes clear. Ahankara na aham. Shankaracharya says that. And then only Shankaracharya says, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. When he says, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, I'm the nature of Shiva, of consciousness, that I is not the ego.
So
that I is still the ego, but only the ego after enlightenment. What Sri Ramakrishna talks about, Pakami, the right ego.
So is the ego is the first one to receive the reflected consciousness?
Yes. Actually, the first one.
That's where it starts.
Actually, the first one to receive the reflected consciousness is the Anandamaya Kosha. Even deeper. But you cannot see anything there. Because there's no activity there. The Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellect, to which is associated the ego, the sense of doership. That's why Vedanta Sara again. When the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the sheath of the intellect is introduced, there's a new term which is introduced there. Vyavaharika Jiva Ityuchyate. If you look it up, definition of Vijnanamaya Kosha. This is the transactional sentient being. The sentient being, the individual Jiva, is already there. From the point of from the moment you have an Anandamaya Kosha, the causal body, already Jiva, Brahman is already limited as Jiva or appearing as Jiva. But then you have to wait for the Vijnanamaya Kosha to come to become aware that I am. This is the activity. Then the ego becomes active. And you can practically, transactionally feel yourself as somebody. Yeah. All right then. Yeah, that's a very subtle question. Shubhadeep has said, our Latu Maharaj is a classic example as in case of Totakacharya. Yes, Latu Maharaj, Swami Adbhutanandaji is considered one of the great miracles of Sri Ramakrishna. Without a shred of education, he was not even literate, and he became a Brahmagyani, realized an enlightened being. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.